The 80s was by far one of the best eras for horror, as nearly every single subgenre within it was doing extremely well. From the sci-fi horror of The Thing and Aliens, to the occult in Poltergeist and Prince of Darkness, to finally the body horror of The Fly and the Blob, there was a bit of something for everyone. However, there exists a movie that is a bit of a bizarre combo of each of these, and while you might have heard of it, you might not have actually watched it. That would of course be 1981's Possession. But before getting into the video, make sure if you haven't already to like and subscribe to the channel, as I upload once every other week on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Central Time. And you may have noticed that I started releasing my videos on Saturdays instead of Wednesday, and that was because I wanted to give myself a bit more time to finish during the week rather than forcing myself to get it done midweek, which is especially tough with schooling. But enough yapping, let's get back into the video. Directed by Adzrej Zulaski. I probably completely butchered that, and I'm completely sorry. The film follows a couple in West Germany, Mark and Anna, played by Sam Neill and Isabella Adjani, respectively. After Mark gets home from a spy mission, he finds out Anna has been cheating on him with another man. The couple then begins to go through a nasty divorce process, with Anna becoming increasingly unhinged with time, to the point where Mark begins to suspect that she is possessed. And that's really all I can say about the movie before getting into heavily spoiler territory. Seriously, this movie drops you right into everything, so if you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend stopping now and watching it for yourself. Seriously, I cannot give any more without completely spoiling the movie. There's just not a lot that happens before, so really give it a watch. But for those who might have already seen it or just don't care about spoilers, let's continue. Anna becomes increasingly unhinged with time as Mark himself begins to spiral into depression, and you may be saying, ABA, how exactly is this horror movie bizarre? It sounds like just some weird divorce drama with a supernatural twist. Well, if you just give me a minute, damn, I can explain. Sheesh, don't rush me. After a fight where Mark hits Anna and Anna tries to commit not living in the kitchen, Mark hires a private investigator to try and find her so he can confront her about their relationship. This is where things get truly bizarre, as while investigating, the investigator runs into this. Now you may be asking yourself, what in the ever-living fuck is that thing? And to be honest, I wasn't entirely sure myself. Up to this point, the movie, while bizarre, was relatively grounded. Don't get me wrong, the movie is heavily overacted, but that is to be expected from a lot of 80s horror films. But this scare comes so out of left field, with next to no hints of the film's true intentions. It played like a divorce drama where Anna was possibly possessed up to this point, but it colored me surprised when I saw whatever the living fuck that thing was on screen. And I'm sure many of you guys who have seen it were also completely thrown by surprise by it, as it seems to come completely out of left field and has, as I said, next to no hints. And I will say this, movies don't usually blindside me that much anymore, because I've seen a lot of them, so I know the tropes and what's really to be expected after each scene after a while. But this is one of the few movies that's completely blindsided me on a couple occasions. But to continue, she then kills the private investigator, seemingly feeding him to the monster within the side room. After this point, the movie never really gets back to that grounded level and continues to get more and more bizarre as the couple gets back together for one night, causing Mark's love for Anna to come back full swing. However, due to the disappearance of the private investigator Zimmerman, his partner goes to investigate Anna. He then walks into this. Upon seeing this monster, I was completely floored, as I for the first time in a while had no idea what was going to come next in a movie. This movie takes so many left turns that no matter what you think may happen next, it completely flips it on your head. Anna then kills Zimmerman and then has a crisis of faith in the subway, causing her to have a full-blown meltdown and miscarriage. Her lover, Heinrich, then goes to visit Anna where he sees the monster in its fully evolved state. Heinrich then goes to meet with Mark to explain the situation, but then Mark kills him in order to defend his love for Anna and hopefully get her out of the situation. He then gets rid of all of the evidence of the murders and meets up with Helen, a woman who looks exactly like Anna and seems to be his idealized version of her. Anna then kills one of Mark's secret lovers, Margie, and has sex with the monster in Margie's apartment as she repeats one word over and over again, almost. I wish I was kidding, but I told you this movie is absolutely bizarre. And at this point, I really was questioning my decision of watching the movie, as I wasn't directly disliking the movie, it was just so bizarre that I felt like something that really shouldn't have been watched in the first place. There are very few movies that I've seen that I can say have felt deranged in a way that this movie was made. For example, another film that fits into that category for me is 1977's House, as the film is just so bizarre in its presentation that it almost feels like its own director's personal breakdown. Possession gave me that feeling in a much more aggressive and distressing way, and honestly, at this point, I had to pause in my brain as the movie seemed to just drop you right into hell at this point. But continuing, Mark gets asked to join back in the spy mission, but refuses, instead having to flee the cops, where he gets badly wounded in the process. He then runs into a random building where he once again runs into Anna and an exact doppelganger of Mark, which actually is the fully evolved form of the monster she was sleeping with. Anna then commits not living, also killing Mark in the process, as the doppelganger convinces a nearby passerby to begin firing on the police officers that are now chasing after him. He then goes to Helen's house as bombs start to drop, and Mark and Anna's son, Bob, yells not to let him in and commits not living in a bathtub. So what the actual fuck is this movie even about, and what makes it just such a fascinating watch? As while the movie reads like there's no way it should work, it somehow just clicks in a lot of ways. Well, first off, the cinematography in the film is just absolutely outstanding. It's one of the few 80s B-horror movies you're going to watch where the camera feels like a character itself, as a lot of the emotions the film is trying to portray come across in the camera work alone. For example, in one of my favorite sequences, when Mark finds out that Anna has been cheating on him, the camera begins to rapidly spin around him, portraying his life actively falling apart around him. Unlike a lot of the other films which usually use tripods and stable shots as much as they possibly can, this movie is instead full of handheld shots, giving the film an extremely disorienting feeling throughout. For example, with by far the most famous scene in The Miscarriage, the handheldness of the camera while disorienting really allows us to feel the emotions that Anna is going through within the movement. The camera lacks control, just like Anna is with her emotions in that very moment. And there's the absolutely bizarre acting throughout that is pretty hard to describe with words, as it's just so over the top that I wouldn't blame many of you for finding it somewhat comical throughout. However, remember with movies that everything you see within it is a particular decision, as these take years and years to produce on many occasions. So what could possibly be the reason for this decision? Well, it really comes down to the fact that the characters are outwardly showing the emotions that they are feeling in that moment, as an ugly divorce is one of the worst things that someone can go through emotionally. Anna is so violently contorting because the anger she feels towards Mark is so extreme that the best she can do is violently twitch in place. This also heavily combines with the camera work, as one of the best examples of this comes in play with the sequence where Anna is confronting Mark in the apartment after his depressive episode. It's this shot where he goes up and down on his rocking chair, as when he pushes himself into the conversation, he's putting his emotions over Anna and putting himself physically ahead of her within the frame. But while he thinks he is pushing himself forward, he is still within the weaker section, as he is framed to the left and her to the right, which are the two power points within the frame. So despite pushing himself into the forefront, he still is not really the one in control over his emotion and the situation as a whole. Then finally, the other reason it's bizarre is because none of this is really meant to be taken at face value. Nearly every aspect of the film is really a metaphor for divorce, as well as the country that the two reside within. See, this movie was filmed in 1981 in Berlin during the middle of the Berlin Wall crisis and is featured heavily within the film. So not only is the wall here a metaphor for the split within their relationship, but their divorce is also a metaphor for the city as a whole. This is because the director himself had gone through his own nasty divorce directly before making this movie, while also being from Poland, which explicitly saw the divide in Europe at the time. Because of this, a lot of his own frustrations with his life and the world he lived in seep through, and you can really see it throughout. Take their kid at the end committing not living when the idealized Mark meets with the idealized Anna. While it might seem bizarre, it really makes sense as the kid himself has seen where this relationship goes, as while they are both idealized versions of another, they are still not truly meant for one another, and thus he knows it's going to be the exact same way as the first time. And like a lot of the best films, I could spend hours and hours pulling out detail after detail, but really, if you haven't already, it's best to just watch the movie for yourself, as there's just truly nothing else like it. It's a wild ride from start to finish, and if you want to see the real relationship divide portrayed with some goofy 80s effects, then this truly would be the movie for you. Possession works because it embraces chaos as a storytelling language, turning emotional collapse into literal monsters. And to conclude this all for you guys, what were your thoughts on this video, and if you have seen the movie, what did you guys think of it? 80s body horror was truly a different time to behold, and this really has got to be one of the most bizarre films I've ever seen. It doesn't really have a narrative in the traditional sense, so if you want to watch it after this, you may still find yourself somewhat confused. But with all that being said, make sure to like and subscribe and comment your thoughts down below, and I'll see you all soon.